This is just getting worse. In 2016, 2017, in David Douglas, the disparity has now risen to 3.3 times. So that's per capita, black kids are being suspended 3.3 times greater than white peers. Now, in terms of that conduct, when we dive down into that, because what we see there is basically anti-black bias, right? We have kids being suspended for reasons of conduct. So these conduct reasons are reasons such as defiance, disrespect to authority, dress code, gestures, insubordination, and language. They're really minor offenses, and they're really highly subjective. And the All Hands Raised report really focused on that those are highly impressionable by people's individual biases. So in David Douglas High School last year, black students were suspended at a rate 6.6 times, or 660% greater than their white peers, for these minor subjective offenses. And again, those are driven by overwhelmingly by administrators and teachers, which we know are overwhelmingly white and are not held to any sort of accountability in terms of their individual biases. So furthermore, when we look at really objective reasons like tobacco, alcohol, weapons, arson, cheating, plagiarism, forgery, the things we think of why kids would be kicked out of school, actually, white students are 1.3 or 30% more likely than their peers to be suspended for those reasons. So for the major offenses, white kids are more likely to commit them, slightly. For the minor, anybody can just decide to kick this kid out for looking at him funny, black kids, 6.6 times greater at the high school. When we take that kind of data together with looking at the disparity in graduation rates, who's being sent to Fur Ridge or Open or other institutions that are outside of the district, we see again disparity, much higher representation from kids of color than we do for white kids. They're being kicked out in the same way that they're being kicked out and suspensions and expulsions are being sent out of the district. So in other words, we're just seeing the school to prison pipeline very clearly in David Douglas. And I want to focus on Al-Asat because Al-Asat has the greatest disparity. It's at 4.4, so like I said, it was 3.3 overall for the district, but Al-Asat is actually 4.4 times greater. And I find that highly interesting because when my daughter was suffering almost nearly daily racial assaults at Al-Asat, and I brought this same data up to the administrators at Al-Asat, I was told that I was wrong, that there is no disparity by race, which I think is really glaring in that our administrators aren't being held to any sort of standard. They're not even aware of their own data. And then interestingly, at Ron Russell and Floyd Light, you have a suspension rate of 85 per 100 students, black students. So you have nearly a suspension per kid. And you tie that together with the administrators not even tracking that data. They're not even looking at it. It's there, it's not hard to get. You just put in a public records request to Derek and it's easy. Yeah, you just ask for it. But your principals aren't even aware of it. That's not okay. So these are my immediate asks. I want an immediate formation of a civil rights department in David Douglas School District. I think this is high time that we start tracking these things and enforcing them in the serious nature they are. This is discrimination in the most blatant form. I want the board to establish measurable, trackable, enforceable equity requirements for every single school. And I really am asking for transparency in this. Every school website should list, these are our suspension data by race. If I would have known as a parent what Al-Asat looks like, I would have never sent a child there. Not a chance. I wouldn't even move to this district. I want the board to provide that also on the board website. You guys should have it should be provided, not even annually, but like quarterly. We should be seeing what's happening in our schools. And we should have a person that's the go-to person for civil rights complaints. We shouldn't have to fight with individual administrators for them to take these allegations seriously. Not just suspensions, but anything related to racism. And I really want some immediacy. I think that the board should, given the nature of this, be giving monthly reports by race on the suspensions and expulsions. I think we should be seeing in real time what's going on. And last, we need accountability. I think that the board should set up immediate parameters for the principals and the vice principals. They should know the data that's happening in their schools without a doubt. And this should be made available to parents. And I think there should be accountability on that hiring and firing. If we have principals that can't, be trusted with civil rights, then they shouldn't be the principals. So again, I ask that you dive into this data, and again, I just brushed over, and I only focused on black and white kids because of time. But this is big, and this is heavy stuff, and it should not be continued to be ignored. I mean, it was 2012, All Hands Raised came forward with the same exact thing I'm saying, and it's only gotten worse, not better.
Catherine Sherman?
Well, I just come before you once more to reaffirm that there's still been no meaningful action taken on censure of Mr. Anderson, and that, you know, the turnover of a couple of board positions doesn't make anything go away. It doesn't unring a bell that's already been rung. It doesn't erase something that is true, and that we're still, we as parents who've been coming to these meetings are still waiting for some sign that this district really means that it's behind every student and supportive of every student, and will continue to show up and continue to fight for censure to be re-voted on and reintroduced, and hold all board members, new and existing, to equal account in the matter. So just wanted to reaffirm that we're still here and we're still waiting for some sign that we've been heard.
Okay.
Just two? Just two?
Yep. Okay, now we're on to item number 3, election of board leadership. An action item, and what we're looking for tonight is a nomination of a vice chair. So I'll open those nominations now.
I nominate Rita Christopher.
It needs a second, I second it.
Anything else? Okay, nominations closed. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Rita's the new vice chair.
Okay, I'm willing to do, huh?
Yeah, didn't even ask. Are you willing to do that?
6th time, only the 6th time.
Superintendent's report.
Absolutely. So, a few things tonight, and I'll be brief. I shared with you a few things over email, but the first thing I'd like to point out is in front of you, you have enrollment credits by high school through Mount Hood Community College. It's a spreadsheet that looks like this. I should have put it in front of every board members. If you don't have one, Stephanie, here's a new one. I'm sorry.
Okay.
But just wanted to share the data there, and when you look down, and very proud, David Douglas has the most credits earned by high school students, and you can see the numbers there, which are significant and I would say exciting as well. Just opportunities for kids. Basically, total credits 9,085 for a total savings of $850,000 for students in our high school to take advantage of credits through Mount Hood Community College while they're still in our high school. So I just wanted to share with you briefly, and obviously if there's any other questions you have, please don't hesitate to share, but you can go down and look at the other districts and the other schools, and this is a partnership we have with Mount Hood, and we take advantage of because it benefits our students. So that's one. Second one is a few different dates, and I will send a schedule with this as well, but I wanted to make sure, because we have a new board and some new members, if there's any questions about these activities, that it's not just a scheduled coming your way. So the very first one is on August 23rd. We will have our new teacher luncheon at 12 o'clock in the South Cafeteria, and again, I will follow up with an email schedule. But what that is we have an opportunity for all of our new hires to be in one place, and we get to meet and greet them and have lunch, and if board members can attend, it's a great opportunity to be introduced and just take a minute to have a conversation, and we usually kind of spread out at different tables and get an opportunity to connect with our new teachers and staff in general. So if you're able to attend, we'd love to have you, but again, I know you're all professionals as well, and it doesn't always work, but want to make sure you understand the invite is there.
It's from 12 to 1?
Yes, yep. Yeah, 12 to 1. 12 is really the kickoff, the introduction, although we'd introduce anyone that comes in at any time. And 1 is kind of, yeah, it goes a little
That's
later
what it
probably.
is.
Depends when the
Thank you.
pizza runs out, pretty much. But around there, yes, absolutely. The next, just in sequential order here, is August 25th. We have the White Glove Tour, and I believe everyone has responded, maybe not quite yet, but I know for sure we have 4 commitments to attend, which is great. And again, I also know that professionals, it's not always ready, but you will see a follow-up email with the schedule of where we meet and what this is, just so everyone understands. Typically, we carpool, and it's maybe 2 cars, but it depends on how many people go, and we get the opportunity, we visit every single school, the principals are there to meet and greet us, and the head custodian, and the idea of the White Glove Tour is, are the schools ready for the kids, ready for the community? So it's just a fun opportunity for our head custodian and principals to show off their buildings, but it's also an opportunity for you to connect. Are we ready? Are we ready to go? So it's a tradition in this district is what it is, so.
And I
Go ahead,
think
please.
this year with the new board members, it's an opportunity, if you haven't gone in every single school, to actually get to them.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It is, I will say this, it's a full day. Getting to all 14 of our schools, it's a full day. But we have had people in the past that I can meet at 1, and I'll meet, and we know in the schedule where we're at, so we kind of meet in and out, or I have to leave by 11, or, so if that helps anybody with their schedule, again, we're very flexible that way, and we go through and we stay on schedule, because if we don't, we'll never make it through. So, the third one is we're reinstituting another tradition, and it is going to be on August 28th. We will have a staff picnic. That'll be from 11 to 1 o'clock in the stadium. The difference is traditionally, about 4 years ago when we stopped it, we used to have all our staff come and sit up in the stadium. This year, we're going to do more of a picnic format. We're actually going to sit down on the turf, blankets, camp chairs. We are going to have tables and chairs as well. Buffet lines, sandwiches, chips, pieces of fruit, water, and we also are combining it with our benefits fair. So the benefits fair for all of our employees.
Time again?
11 to 1. So 11 is when staff will be showing up, coming off buses. We actually take buses and bus them over. The staff come over on buses. And then from 11 to noon, grabbing food, going out to picnic. Actually, our health and wellness committee is going to have activities set up on the other side of the turf field. And then at noon, we'll do a brief presentation. One of the things we've heard is we didn't really want to be talked at, so it's going to be very brief. But we are going to get to celebrate. We have a tradition in this district of handing out 25-year bells. So when someone's worked in our district for 25 years, they get a bell. So we recognize them. That'll take place along with a few other awards. At 12, it'll be short, and then from 12 to 1, the benefit fair is open, the picnic's open, and it's just meant as a social activity to kind of connect with everybody. So we're hoping for a great turnout and fun, and we'd love it if you were all there as well. I do want to point out as well that lunch, we are providing lunch, but through the hard work of HR, business, and a number of people got excited about this, we've had donations to date of over $5,000 to provide that lunch for our staff, along with gift cards to possibly do a raffle for our staff. So the community is really connected and said we'd love to be part of that, along with our benefit fair. Think about our vendors that are in the benefit fair. They also said they'd love to participate as well. So, and I know Becky, OSEA, actually handed over a check yesterday morning.
That was this morning.
That was this morning, I'm sorry. Holy smokes. That was this morning, yeah, wow. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, a few things there. A few financial updates that are good news that I want to share is, as everyone at this table knows, Measure 98 passed, which was the measure that requires funding around CTE, college prep opportunities and dropout prevention for high schools and 8th grade into high school. And we got our funding for that, and it looks like it's coming in about $3.1 million over the biennium. So about 1.5. So we're fast and furiously trying to develop plans for that with the high school administration, who's really taken the lead on it, to be quite honest. They're an amazing team. But it's good news. It's not something that came out of the state school fund. It's something that was above and beyond that. So that's how it was budgeted, and that's why it's coming to us. It does have very significant criteria for how you spend that money. It has to be on CTE, has to be on college prep opportunities, and it has to be on dropout prevention. So the next one I'd like to share, many of you followed the TriMet Youth Pass, and we had students and representatives helping with that. We've been notified around our funding level there. We aren't quite sure exactly how that's all playing out yet. It was just an email today or yesterday, but we do know that there's been a $306,000 identified for the David Douglas School District to help purchase youth passes for our students for transportation around our community. So we're very excited about that opportunity for our kids as well. And then the third one, we do not know the exact dollar amount, but we just received an email today from OSU Extension, and it's related to Measure 99. And if you remember, Measure 99 is the funding for outdoor school. That funding all goes through Oregon State University system. And basically, what we know right at this point, it is a grant. You do have to apply, but it's not competitive. Basically, we just need to go through the process, and we're fast and furiously going through that. We will be applying for that, and hopefully we'll have some good news about what funding level we will get from that. Changing bases or switching gears here a little bit, want to share ESD funding. One thing that we are moving towards, and this might be the first time that the board's hearing this, is the ESD, which is a partnership, Multnomah ESD. So every district in Multnomah ESD basically are a consortium on different items. One of the things that the ESD came to us and talked to us about was the possibility of funding a public affairs specialist, i.e. a lobbyist. One of the things we've talked about as East County or county districts, Mid-County and East, Portland does have their own lobbyists. They have the funds, but that doesn't always, we aren't always quite on the alignment with some of that lobbying that goes on, and we truly thought that it'd be nice to have representation. So right now, as districts, we're planning to partner with Gresham Barlow, Reynolds, Centennial, us, Corbett, Riverdale, did I say Park Rose? Anyway, the remainder of Multnomah County ESD, and how that will come out of resolution dollars. So it will actually come out of the ESD resolution dollars, and MESD is planning to pick up 17%. So pretty excited about that. Right now, it's still kind of in the infancy, although the hope is by November, we actually look at the ability to hire someone, so they're available for short session. So just planting that seed right now. Few other quick updates. Number one, construction update. Just very excited to tell you, I spoke with David Calloway today, our operations manager, and speak with Pat quite often, and we're on schedule for everything. Lincoln Park, in fact, is ahead of schedule, so we're going to get the principal back in that school sooner than thought. Mill Park is on schedule, and actually they're working fast and furious because it's a roof project, if you remember, and then apparently Sunday we have forecasted rain. So they are planning to get some things buttoned up to at least prepare for that, but there is still more work there. And then Alisad is getting very close. So we're waiting on some railing, kind of overseas type stuff, how things metal and different things. But ultimately, we're all on schedule for all of our construction sites. So we're pretty excited about that. And then the last thing I have is, and Stephanie asked her to start it out, and she'll hand it out. I didn't make copies, but I just wanted to share a feel good, a fun. Our head coach shared, Coach Dill, football coach. We had 30 members of the Scots football team out in the community today, and this was back on July 20th, giving back and by doing yard work in our community where needed. So in total, our team worked at 6 different houses doing this yard work, and I'm summarizing. They even made it to Cherry Park that did some work. Yeah, thanks. And to the high school, ultimately. So, and he says, I'm proud to coach these young men, and they deserve a pat on the back for their willingness to serve. So thanks to those, our young men, students, all of our students, and to Josh as well for organizing this in our community and trying to give back. So, and that's my report tonight.
Okay, thank you. Financial report.
Okay, I'll be brief. In your packet is the financial update for our general fund that we've increased slightly, and we're still closing out things. We're much closer now. Auditors are here in approximately a month, so we're scrambling to get everything done. We did initially project our ending fund at 10.9. We are now at 11.6, so it's up a little bit. In nutrition services, we are up. Our expenditures were lower than anticipated. In our grants fund, so our grants and our student body still are in flux a little bit as we're sorting through those student body accounts and getting them in the right area. But we do project grants funded about $3.1 million, and a lot of that has to do with our Medicaid reimbursements for early childhood and things that come to us in advance, donations, etc. for those that don't know, a lot of times when we get grants, they are on reimbursement basis. So it's really exciting when we get a grant, but we actually have to put the money out and then ask for reimbursement. So there's a little cash flow issue that you make sure you address with grants. Capital projects, as Ken mentioned, that's our Lincoln Park project. It started out a little slow, but then went gangbusters in July. Probably the biggest concern there was windows and getting them in, because those are long lead time items. So my understanding is windows were going in this week, and they are planning to get that opened early. So we still are projecting about 1.9 at the end of last year, but of course, the project is about $1.5, $1.6 million. So the majority of that will come out this year. And construction excise tax, that I projected a little bit high on the last quarter, or the second quarter, depending on which fiscal year you're in, or calendar year. So I do expect that to be about $62,000 less in fund for that.
Pat, when do they actually get charged that excise tax? Is that at the time of permits?
That's when they do their permit filing, is my understanding.
Okay, so that would indicate, because of inclusionary zoning, they had a big bump, like instead of 4,000 permits requested, there was 15,000. That might indicate why it was up, and now it's suddenly down because the
And I think-
inclusionary zoning is putting a little damper on some of
And
the
I think
construction.
timing too of construction is people are getting stuff in a little earlier, so it's coming in through prior quarters.
Any questions for Pat?
Say,
Moving on to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
I move that we approve the consent agenda as printed.
A second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Now on to number 7, public complaint disposition. This is an action item. Get my stuff over here. So we have a complaint made of the complaint involves a possible FERPA violation against the superintendent and the principal at the high school, along with an English language development teacher and an assistant principal at the high school. And it came via email. So I guess I'd like to open discussion on this complaint. And I guess the question before us is, do we move forward with the complaint? I guess I need some motion, is what I'm saying. I need a motion so we can discuss.
I move we open discussion on the complaint.
I second that motion.
Okay? We don't need to vote
You
on
don't need
that,
that
though.
one, no.
Okay.
So now it's open for discussion.
Now it's open for discussion, so does somebody want to go first or say something?
You want to go first?
Yeah, might as well, right? I think that the board absolutely should address the complaint. I don't think it should be something that's set by the wayside. I certainly have my recommendations, and we can definitely talk about it if anybody has any different views on it, but my position on it would be that we deny the complaint based on merit. Not even getting into the idea of standing, which certainly is an aspect of it, but just the actual base merit of the complaint. It does not remotely meet a violation of FERPA. So, those are my thoughts.
I think it should be stated that as a board, we did get legal opinion on it to make sure as part of the, whether it violated FERPA because of the law. And the legal opinion was it did not violate FERPA.
Have anything you want to say?
I'd just like to say it's important that, like Frida said, that the legal opinion is important, and I think it's very important that the board listen to our legal council, and we follow what their recommendations are.
Is there any further discussion? Okay. I need another motion.
So in this, it's improper to move denial of something like this, as far as I recall. So, when my motion is made, my motion will be that we vote to accept the complaint, because that is a motion in the positive, because you can't make a motion necessarily in the negative. So everybody would just have to be aware that that's the motion I'm about to make. I know.
Is the discussion closed or no?
Well, we can discuss more after the next motion.
Yeah, so then there'll be the motion, so the discussion of it in
Okay.
general, yeah. So, I move we vote to accept the complaint.
Is there a second?
I second.
Okay.
Now more discussion.
Okay, this is so fun, Robert's Rules of Order. I would just say that the complaint is about the two students who had been identified through various means as David Douglas students who were the ones on the MAX train, just so folks know what we're talking about here, and that their rights were violated. And I would just say that I had heard concerns before any of this came out from parents in the Somali community who had told me that they were concerned that this was out. And so I talked to all of the people involved in this, including the superintendent right away, the English language development teacher, the parents, and I felt that the district was in a very difficult position and did what they felt was right at the time. I also know the board was given an opportunity to weigh in on that statement that the superintendent put out and didn't say anything. And so I feel as a board, we don't have standing to say yes, that this is a violation, personally. But that's an opinion, and the only thing that really matters is the legal opinion, and it says there's no violation.
Can I ask what additional recourse the complainant has beyond this process?
Ken, you or me?
Well, I do know, yes, so specifically, I'm going to talk in complaints in general, and kind of because this is a little bit about me, but any complaint, once it makes it to the board level, if the board dismisses or denies or whatever language they end up using, then there's notification. Under our policy, there's a requirement around notification, and in that notification, it communicates the ability to appeal any complaint to the State Board of Education, basically.
Okay,
Oregon Department of Education, but is what it is, yeah.
okay.
Any more discussion?
I would just clarify too that the students, this complaint didn't come from the families of the students directly impacted. I think it's important to say that.
Not necessarily.
Okay. I'd like to go ahead and call for the vote.
It's more of a chair thing.
So,
I need some clarification, because I am a little confused.
Okay,
Okay.
so,
You're moving to accept the complaint, and then we'll determine our judgment on the complaint?
well, no,
No.
if the board votes to accept the complaint, then we have accepted the complaint. If the board votes to not accept the complaint, the board denies the complaint.
and so if you vote, a yes vote means you accept the complaint, and no vote means you deny the complaint.
Yep.
And once it's accepted, I think I'm confused by why we accepted it as a complaint and we investigated the complaint that was
As a-
submitted.
No, my
We
understanding
we received a complaint.
is an exception of the complaint means
Yes.
that we're agreeing it's a FERPA violation.
Okay,
Yes, yeah,
that's what I
yeah,
want.
Yeah, there's a difference. We received a complaint, we didn't accept it. So now we have a complaint before us, which we can dismiss, which I don't believe the board, these are my opinions. I don't believe the board should dismiss it. I believe the board has a complaint in front of it, and it has a responsibility to, you know,
Accept
deal with that complaint. And so you have two choices. You can accept the complaint and say, yep, you know what? There was wrongness here based on what this says, and you accept it, and
And
you.
they
you- and you go-
violated
and they violated FERPA, that's an accept. Or you can deny the complaint, saying, no, this was not a violation, we don't feel it was, at which point, just as Superintendent Richardson shared, the complainant has the opportunity, they get notified, and then they have the opportunity to go to the State Board of Education and say, I disagree, I want to appeal this decision by the Board of Directors of the Davis School District.
So thanks for that information. Again, I'm new. I don't know what I don't know. But I also just want to ask questions, right? I view the filing of a complaint as a very sort of escalated way of bringing this conflict to the table. And I would like to know from your end kind of what has been done outside of the formal process to address the issue at hand, what can be done beyond this process to continue to address the issue and repair damage that was created, perceived or otherwise. So beyond these formal legal processes and pathways.
So with the families or with the complainants? 'Cause-
Both.
Okay, so with the complainants, I guess, first of all, they would get a letter that communicates what the board did. If there's, I guess we could offer to meet with the complainant. We could go through that process.
Okay.
I can tell you after my letter was sent that I reached out to, because I got notification actually with Stephanie asking questions. So I reached out to the families, did not speak with, basically both of them spec through the counselor, and then one family actually had an individual that they wanted to communicate through. So,
Okay.
to be quite honest, I'm a little, it's kind of interesting because it's allegations of FERPA violation, so I don't want to go farther because I don't want to be in FERPA violation.
Right.
I don't really want to identify.
Completely respect that. I just want to make sure that we're also being culturally responsive, and a lot of times these legal processes are considered not the best way of establishing communication, right? So just a conversation, a meeting, phone call, what can we do to address the actual root causes of the needs of these parents and these families?
I agree
beyond
completely.
this
I agree completely, Anna. That's a very good point.
I think as a board member's been around a long time, it's, in this case, the district was in a hard spot because one of the students identified herself on Facebook with her school, so it was already out that she came from Douglas. So they were trying to be proactive because the principal was getting calls. The teachers weren't coming, students back till Monday or Tuesday, whatever it was, but the principal was getting a lot of calls. So they felt they needed to be more proactive in without stating any student's name. And so that's what they were trying to do. They were really caught in a spot, given the media attention on the incident. So,
Anything else? Okay, so once again, a positive vote, a yes vote is we're accepting this complaint. Yes, this is a FERPA violation. A no vote is this wasn't a FERPA violation.
And again, the legal counsel came in and said that it was not a FERPA violation.
Legal counsel said it was not a FERPA violation. Okay, so you ready? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Other business and future agenda items. So one thing,
we got a question.
No, yes, I have one.
Oh.
Yes.
You were jumping the gun there, so.
I'm excited. I'm very excited.
go ahead then.
Really? Okay.
Since you're excited.
So I acknowledge the data that was presented earlier. And the board received a copy of all of this data. Thank you, Derek, and your team for running the original request and the added request. And it's not a good picture. As the mom of 2 kids of color, it's of concern to me. But I think I'd like to look at all of this in a larger framework. And that is, we have a really amazing ESL and equity director at David Douglas. And we don't have a specific equity plan for the district. We do have equity goals embedded in some of our district goals. But I think it's time for us as a board to elevate this issue. And the way that I suggest doing this, I would like to work with you as a board and as a superintendent and as an equity director in a cabinet to put forward a process by the next meeting that creates an actual board subcommittee on equity. And I think it's time for that committee to also include members of the community who have an interest in the topic. And I'd like to put forward a charge for that committee with a process for coming to an equity plan for the district. Because I think a lot of things like disparate discipline, issues around retaining and retention of teachers of color or other teachers are strategies that can be used to address equity. And so that's my proposal. That's it.
I don't have a problem with your proposal, except that given our recent workshop, we might want to call it a superintendent's committee.
No, I think it should be public.
Well, no, superintendent, those meetings can be public as well.
Right, but making it a board subcommittee actually means that you are subject to record laws. You're, telling the public you're about to have a meeting. I just think it's time to uplift it, and I'm not afraid of the conversation. I actually think it's a good conversation to have. And I think it's a conversation we should have with our educators, with our parents, with our community members, our community partners, and we need to uplift the work that Kelly Devlin has done. One of the things that I love about this district so much is that it's had some amazing progress on English language development outcomes. It's not that we need a new plan that addresses this. Maybe some of the things we're already doing, but the public doesn't know about it, right? So there are many reasons, and I think it's time for us as a board to uplift this issue and to show the community that we've really heard some of the issues that have been brought forward in the last few meetings.
I really support that, and thank you for bringing that to us as a possibility. I also think that it's important that subcommittees of this type and work of this type be led by people that are directly impacted. So I would
Yes.
be glad to step up and chair this
Absolutely.
committee and do what I can to help convene the right people at the
Thank
table.
you.
I really think it's needed. So, thank you.
Just a comment on what you opened with regarding the exclusionary discipline summary. One of the things that I would ask, when we do review it, there's potential to choose a narrative, right? And the narrative can skip back and forth between percentages and totals, right? So when we choose to discuss it, my recommendation would be to pick one, right? Because if we go back and forth between which one we want, it's a little bit disingenuous. And my point being that when we look at this, and thank you, Derek, for sending it, I really appreciate it. We say total violations, right, 1,783. And when we say total students with incidents is 931, right? And so when we say that there were 1,700 incidents, we need to make sure we're saying that those are incidents, not students, because that's what translated down below, what everybody read down here when they make their totals. They're saying students, not incidents.
Yes, because some of them are the same student having,
Absolutely,
understood, but
right.
this is kind of getting into the weeds to me. Because,
well,
a little
I would
bit,
say
because you're talking about measurement, right? How do we measure progress? And that's a discussion we can have, but I'm talking about the board and the community setting broad goals,
Right, and
right?
you were talking about the committee. I'm talking about when we talk specifically about this, which I
Okay.
assume as a board we're going to. So I'm staying right here on this page.
Okay.
I'm not going to the equity department or the ESL department or trying to determine whether it's a board committee or a
Got it.
superintendent's.
That's
right?
fair.
So when we look at this, if there's 553 students with one incident, right, that leaves the remaining 378 students with an average of 3 incidents. So it's not an additional 1,200 students that experience this. So where there is a possibility, and I think Heather spoke, I think she said it very well, there's certainly a possibility to look and see if there's a disparity between a selected subgroup where the student has a dress code violation and their response is, well, that's ridiculous, that's stupid, I'm not wearing anything wrong. And for that subgroup, that just becomes a dress code violation, but for another subgroup, that becomes a dress code violation.
That's right.
And
That's an
the other
equity
two,
issue.
right?
Exactly.
Absolutely, those absolutely can be looked at. But if you do that, it still makes, it still is difficult to do so without acknowledging that the numbers that are along the bottom are not the percentages that should be used when we talk about the percentage of our students. It's the percentage of incidents. Because I've ran the math both ways, and they're not close. So,
Kyle and I had this discussion on numbers and people using numbers and using percentages one time and numbers the other time. And it can skew the narrative quite significantly. So you're better off choosing one
Just pick one.
method and just sticking with it. And I just happen to be a numbers person and it happened to when the health clinic first came up, that they were skewing them with these two different methods, and it just was.
So are you saying that you don't believe that there's a disparate discipline problem?
No, we're just saying
Okay.
you should just
That's
use
all
the-
I'm saying.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
it's not necessarily,
Well,
I
if I
understand what you're
believe
saying
that,
about
I
how
guess
to read numbers. I understand
statement would
math.
be then, my statement would be then, why do we let all the Asian kids skate, right? If I thought there wasn't a disparate problem, that's
yeah.
the case right here, right? Obviously, their discipline level is at a much lower level, so there's gonna be disparate issues, but when we break it down to actual incidents, I think that's when you're gonna find the real numbers, and that's when you're able to then dig in and find that when someone is assessed dress code, that they may also be getting disruptive conduct and disrespect to authority, and that's where it's, I don't wanna call it piling on, but
No, I appreciate the desire to have accurate data representation. I also want to acknowledge that there is a balance between quantitative and qualitative data, and the equity committee under my leadership will absolutely have both. The numbers tell one story, but the stories tell a far different one, and both are equally valuable in this regard. So I agree that there should be consistent data and in good faith representation of what's actually happening, and also we need to hear what's actually lived experience and weigh that as well. So.
Anything else on that one? Okay, I wanted to bring up, this fall's, there's gonna be an OSBA, there's always an OSBA conference in downtown Portland. It's the Oregon School Board Association. At some point, Lori's gonna ask people if they wanna go. Please respond to her when she asks.
It's usually right close to Veterans Day. It's a Friday, Saturday, Sundays.
Sunday.
Yeah, but Friday and Saturday are the main things and stuff.
I think that's all I wanted to mention. We did talk briefly, so Karen and I talked briefly about the actual national conference as well, which is in March, April. And,
San Antonio.
With our budget cuts, maybe we need to rethink opening up to all the board to go and making it,
In Texas?
Yeah, it's in
Yeah,
San Antonio.
I actually would object to travel to Texas at this time, given the implementation of Senate Bill 4, which will be effective September 1. There are many jurisdictions implementing travel bans. I don't think that, given the anti-immigrant sentiment in that state, we should be using taxpayer dollars to fund travel to Texas at this time.
I might bring up something. We have another board workshop, but it's more on process. And with everything that's occurred since March, April, I had mentioned years ago, I went through some equity training. I'd like to see whether, it doesn't have to be right away because things are kind of crazy in September and whatnot, but doing a board workshop on equity training for the board. I think it will be helpful all the way around for everyone. Then we're all talking this, it's just like talking right now. Are we talking the same language? We
Yep.
may mean the same things, but we may be saying them different, so we're misinterpreting each other, So I thought that might be helpful for us in the future.
I think that's excellent, and I would love to see 100% participation in that training.
Excuse me, guys, it's hard to hear everything.
Oh, is it not coming through?
I can hear you guys, but some of you guys have softer voices.
I need
Sorry.
to pull close. Sorry. Did you hear what I asked for?
Not the last thing.
Okay, I asked for a board workshop. We're doing some board workshop, and we have one on Friday for process, which is more process related. But I'd like to do a board workshop on equity training for the board. So we do equity training in our district for staff, but I'd like to see something done for the board in response to some of the things we heard, because often we say the same thing, but we say it with different terms and get misinterpreted because of it. we can all start talking the same language too at the same time.
And I followed up with a request that we have 100% participation from the board in that training. That's my request.
Do we have any future agenda items?
I would like to open up discussion around the schedule for our board meetings. I do experience hardship as a mother of 2 small children with the timings. I understand in the past we had met twice a month, and one of those meetings was for voting purposes, one was not. I would actually, as a new board member, really benefit from having a separate monthly board meeting just for the purpose of data and reports and information sharing. Maybe tag that along with the executive session, and then have the other meeting just start earlier, end earlier. Also, I think it would be great to open up the conversation around what accessibility we can provide to the community when they attend these meetings, whether that's childcare, whether that's assistance providing food, and what we can do to maximize participation and make sure that we have a really good representation of all constituent voices in this space.
I absolutely agree with that. One model we can look at is the East Portland Action Plan, which I think does a really incredible job of community engagement. I was involved in the work around creation of the Public Involvement Advisory Committee originally of the City of Portland, and those are some of the best practices for public engagement. So I think that that's a really good thing to get into. I'm not sure, Pat, what we could do on the budget side, but if there is a board kind of line item, maybe we could help contribute to that. I'm not sure how that might pencil out, but it can't be that much.
Just, you know.
Well, and I always bring this up because I'm the Girl Scout leader mom. There's actually a Girl Scout badge for babysitting, and one of them is to provide childcare, and childcare at a meeting such as this would help them finish their badge. And I know that our school district has a lot of cadet level Girl Scouts that would like to have that opportunity, and I think, I'm sure the Boy Scouts probably don't have a babysitting badge.
No,
but
no, they
Well,
don't.
that's problematic.
should.
They
That-
should.
I think
But
that if we
also,
involve
yeah.
some of our youth groups that we could get babysitting covered.
Yeah, I would have a question around liability for the
Yeah.
district for that. These are people's children, and things happen at late night hours.
They would have to have a
Yeah.
supervisor
Okay,
there.
okay.
And kids
Yeah.
playing with the children.
Okay.
Kind of situation
Yeah.
for that to work.
Awesome. But I do
We
really
don't
like
turn Girl
EPAP's
Scouts
model
loose
too.
with little kids,
Yeah. Okay.
just for fun, so.
But I think it'd be great also to just involve the boys in some of that childcare work too, and
Yeah,
just
that's why I said
start
maybe the
breaking
Boy
down some of
Scouts
those
too,
gender
even though they
roles.
don't have
Yeah.
a badge.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, other future agenda items? Okay. Board member reports. Somebody want to go first? Or do you want me to pick? Okay, Stephanie, go for it.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, I report that I've been on vacation for the past 2 weeks with my husband and got to go to Orcas Island, but that I very much enjoyed the board training that we had on Tuesday. I feel like I got a good sense of what this team's skills are and what you bring to the table, and I'm excited to serve the district. That's all I have to report this time. Next time, there'll probably be other things.
Andrea?
I don't have anything.
Anna?
No report today.
Pass.
So you might remember last month and previously I'd brought up about, I thought it would be a good idea that the board supported the administration and recommended that we have a recognition of Constitution Week. So we kind of talked about that last month a little bit, and I know Stephanie and I and Dan and Ken, and I'm sorry, I'm probably leaving out a few others, but we passed some emails trying to find out who we could engage, and you know, you'd think it would be as simple as just contacting the Immigration Service, but that was a little bit difficult. Anyway, I did finally find the community relations officer, and I did speak with her, and this might be a little bit beyond my scope of responsibility, like we talked about on Tuesday night. So Ken, excuse me, and Candy, and all the rest of you if I'm stepping on anybody's toes. But this is just something that I've taken an interest in, and I really like to see the district do something. So Stephanie had brought up that maybe the basis for a program could be a naturalization ceremony at the high school, which I think would probably be the most likely place where people would get the most out of it. People meaning our students. And that was a great suggestion. So that's where we got in contact with the Immigration Service and Ms. Quinn over there. Unfortunately, it's too late to get anything going for this September. They're already booked. However, they do have almost weekly naturalization ceremonies at the offices downtown. So we could encourage civics class, government class, whatever, to take field trips to go downtown on almost a weekly basis. They just need to know ahead of time. I can provide the contact information. There is a bigger event out at the Evergreen Air Museum out in McMinnville on Veterans Day in November, and that could take an unlimited amount of people because they have unlimited space. So I might just throw that out there, that that could be a field trip, maybe accomplishing a couple of things with the museum and witnessing, that would be a rather large naturalization ceremony because of where they're going to be. So now, having said all that, Ms. Quinn was very excited about the fact that a school district was interested in hosting a naturalization ceremony. And she said that she would be, like first in line when they go to their planning meeting for 2018, which will occur this fall, to recommend that the David Douglas School District be a host for a naturalization ceremony. So I took the liberty to tell her that I thought that the district would really like to do that, but I need to check with everybody. But,
Thanks, Bryce, for your interest in this issue. I would strongly object to our district involvement in that for a couple of reasons I'll lay out. One, I think the district, we are a mixed district, mixed status families. I don't believe that at this time calling attention to citizenship or in any way creating stigma around those who are not citizens is going to benefit our district. I believe that, actually, I would love to see an entire shift in language from citizens to community members and students and families. I don't believe that we have the resources, human resources or otherwise, to be able to lose instructional time at this level right now. I think we would benefit more from focusing on internally what we need to do and observing as we are required to do Constitution Day, but investing further resources doesn't seem like it would be wise at this point, especially given the sensitivities around immigration and citizenship status in the district right now.
I want to make a comment because I can understand what Anna's, what you're saying, but I think I'd want to check with. We have a large immigrant and refugee population who get citizenship all the time. They might like the idea of having a ceremony here and being recognized here rather than some sterile
office.
Yeah.
And I'd certainly be open to that if that request came from them directly. I think for me the concern is using resources we don't have, but also, there's never been a complaint that I know of brought against how we observe Constitution Day or a request from community to expand the observation practice at all. So if that request were to come from those, then I think that we would have a different discussion.
Yeah, it was an idea that I floated, just to be clear. And the reason why is because, in my day job, the organization that I'm involved in is part of a project called the New American Citizens Voters Project, and over the past several years, we've registered 20,000 new citizen voters at those ceremonies, and it's just like a really positive day. But I do hear that there could be some unintended harm or a message sent that we don't mean to send, but that certainly my intention was to celebrate. I don't know anyone who is more excited about the U.S. Constitution than someone who just became a citizen. I mean, I've been to so many of those. So that was why I thought that was a really great opportunity to highlight Citizenship Day. It's also Citizenship Day. It's not just Constitution Day. It's actually, it's both. But I hear you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, so to finish, again, maybe I've dipped my toe into a deeper section of the water than what I personally should have or needed to, because it's probably more of an administration thing, so please accept my apologies in advance. So I had somebody on the phone, that, and believe me, enough of us were trying to find the right person, and when she called me back, I figured it was time to talk. So anyway, it's on the table that 2018 could be an option during Constitution Week, September of 2018 for David Douglas. We just need to express the interest and go forward with it if that's what we want to do. That's my report. Sorry it was a little long, but
That's good for question. As usual, well, foundation has taken a little hiatus for a month, so I don't have anything to report on the foundation right now. But on housing, there's been a lot going on. I've been serving on the stakeholder group for the housing bond measure. And next Monday is our last meeting bringing the framework together. And there's some things that I've advocated, because I'm actually serving, not for David Douglas, but for East Portland Action Plan's Housing Committee, and looking out for East Portland, which is, I make sure they know I am looking out for East Portland. But I do, as I say, sometimes put on my school hat. And so we've gotten a couple of things into the criteria that in some ways will be helpful, because one of the problems with, there's problems with concentrating low income. A lot of it was caused by building out here and just everybody getting gentrified in inner Portland and gentrifying and whatnot. But it does impact the schools with additional work, additional costs. As Ken has shared, we have a lot of specialists that we may not have needed if our population was different with the low income. So I've gotten into their criteria that they look at school catchment areas and whether there's that no more than one new, and I'm talking new construction, not rehab, new building be put in each catchment area so it's dispersed between schools. And this is throughout Portland. This isn't just because you'll keep from concentrating, putting more of a load on one school. And actually it was kind of interesting because a lot of the non-school people thought that was a good idea. But one of the other things coming out of it, because we tend to have housing here that everybody's living in already, and we want them, with East Portland Action Plan, we want them to stay. So the criteria is also written, 50% of the bond measure is spent on rehab, and the criteria is written to rehab. It'll be more in East Portland than other parts of the city, because that's what our need. And it does two things. It gets done faster, and the other thing is the people who are living in the apartments get to stay in the apartments. So it's not displacing them. And that's a focus too of displacement is one of the issues we've discussed and stuff. So I've been kind of pushing that to make sure we can stabilize our housing in East Portland as much as I can do. I also have, I'm a glutton for punishment with housing lately, is the homeless joint office of, what is it?
Office of Homeless Services.
Yeah. All those acronyms, is seeking committee members that have school district experience, because they have no one on there that, I don't know whether it's my vocalism at the SAG meetings that are causing them to think maybe they should have someone who knows something about schools. So I put in for being on that committee as well, so we can share the school perspective, and they you know, like placements of shelters, what they need to do and that type of thing from a school perspective. So anyway, that's mainly what I've been doing all summer, is either negotiating or doing housing. So.
Anybody got anything else? I don't have anything. So
done
we're
early.
adjourned.